Okay, here we go. We're talking about St. Elmo Church of Christ, okay, and all the years. And like I said, when I was a kid, I loved it. You know, Sunday night, Wednesday, the whole thing. What was the thing that you talked about mom? Now, that's a good part of it, too. I do slightly remember her not being on board with going, but now I would always go to church, you know, when I was in Livingston, which was a Baptist church. And it's a funny thing, once I went to Boyd and back at St. Elmo, I didn't ever tell anybody I went to a Baptist church. What did you ever think about? And I know you have your opinions on it now, but back then, once you became Church of Christ, were you one of those guys that was like, Church of Christ, that's it?
Yeah, Bible thumper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now you played, I want to say Moody Bible Institute because that's what comes to mind. But in the mornings on Sunday mornings, the vibe was there because you would turn up preacher or whoever what radio show was on. But you knew those were not Church of Christ, right?
Right.
Okay, so
I really didn't know what they were. I just knew they were preachers.
Yeah.
And I still think, I don't care what denomination you are, what if even if you're a shyster or you just put it for money, you know, just like the disciples come and talk to Jesus, said, hey, there's people out there, you know, curing people and doing this and in your name, but they're not doing it like we are.
Yeah.
And he said, leave them alone. That he that is with us is not against us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I look at it. Don't listen to the messenger, listen to the message.
Okay.
Because as long as they do it by scripture and what they're talking about, I mean, that's just like saying a preacher that's coming to adultery shouldn't talk about adultery. No, he should talk about it, but he doesn't need to be doing it either.
Right. So you look at it back then, and I remember being Church of Christ, and you figure that's the way that, I mean, obviously we love Church of Christ, we always have, but now how do you look at not looking back, but now, you know, the talk goes on at church about, okay, this person's Catholic, this person's, how do you view that being a Christian? How do you view like Catholicism?
Well, I mean, Christianity is not a religion to me, it's a way of life. And people have their own way, their own relationship, because to me, Christianity is a personal thing. You know, I have to study the scriptures and pray about it. God will let me get whatever He wants, how He wants me to believe, and what I interpret it to be the right thing. So to me, individually, I think denominationalism splits Christians into groups, and it shouldn't be. Mm. Denominational people are not our enemies. Sin is our enemies. Now, there's a lot of denominations, even Church of Christ, that teach error, because at one time there was like in Tennessee, there's 300 different types of churches of Christ. Mm-hmm. We all don't agree on the things. So that's why I like about Church of Christ, we're individual congregations. We set up, you know, hopefully how the Bible tells us to live, and we stick by it. Mm-hmm. We don't let outsiders determine what we should believe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so, and I got caught up in that too. You know, going to Church of Christ school, obviously, and looked at everybody else as they were doing it wrong. The funny thing is, you remember we went back to see Grandma. I was 18 years old, it was my senior year, and we went back to Texas, and of course we got her to move down here. But the first time we went, I was 12. And she was going to a Church of Christ, of all things. You remember? Yeah. And do you remember teaching the lesson do you remember that?
Yeah, I went up there. Matter of fact, you know, they wanted me to teach at the Hispanic group. You know, they had a separate service for.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
I went up there and said, "No, I think you want to go downstairs." I said, "No, I know where I want to go." And so, but I had to have an interpreter.
Yeah, I remember. The guy stood there right beside you, and you gave what I thought was kind of it might have been. Were you listening to Chuck Swindoll back then, or is that too early?
That's too early.
Okay, well, whatever it was a rip-off sermon of one that you heard, because I'd heard it before.
Well, you know, like Solomon says, there's nothing new under the sun. You know, after you hear so many sermons, after you study, there's just so much you can add to it. You know, we all develop things by how we hear, how we're taught. So there's nothing new. You just try to put a good message out.
Well, it leads me to this. Is where I'm going with this. Is that how profound do you think it was for Grandma Rita Rico, for you to come back to Texas and get up there and be be given the lesson. Seriously.
It was unreal because, like I said, I never knew Mother was Church of Christ. I just thought she was Catholic. Didn't even know. Because, the thing about it is, I know nobody can understand it. Growing up, we really didn't grow up as a close-knit family. My parents were illiterate, working class, that just trying to survive with 6 kids. I don't even remember us sitting at a table. I was telling a friend of mine today, I can't remember us sitting down as a family to eat any meal.
Yeah.
Mother would cook it, put it on the stove, and everybody just come.
I remember you telling me that. Yeah, you just come get it as you wanted it.
So, and us 8 people were the only family there for miles. I mean, I forget when I was about 15 or 16, we went and saw where my grandmother lived. And I mean, it took hours for us to get there. And we just didn't have any other family or relatives around. So we were just us, and we weren't you talk about dysfunctional family. Well, none of us even kept up with each other much during that. And after we grown up and got married, we really didn't have much contact with each other.
No, that's bizarre. I will say one thing that I'd forgotten about earlier was that you had told me before that maybe you and Uncle Joe, just correct me if I'm wrong, would have to fill out papers for Grandma and Angel.
Yeah, well, my oldest sister did it until she left.
Aunt Neva.
Yeah, and then when she left, I did it. I done it for Mother, because Dad had died time I started doing it. But I guess when Reagan gave everybody amnesty, we had to quit doing that.
Well, okay, that brings me to today. You get to you watch the news just like I do, and so you see the illegal immigrant problem. Now, they weren't illegal, obviously, because I think Jake still got Angel's green card, if I'm not mistaken. So they came over here and had to fill out papers to be able to work, and then obviously which I consider that's the way that you should do it, and then they, Grandma became a citizen, I assume, before she passed.
Well, yeah, amnesty I don't know if you become a citizen, but you get amnesty where you're here legally and you don't have to fill out the papers and report that you belong here.
Well, you definitely are one of those guys that can get into this. What do you think about what's happening now? Especially like with them letting so many people in, maybe in the last 4 years, or however they say the Biden administration has let a certain number of people in. What is your take on that?
Well, we're a country of laws, and I know a lot of people think, well, the moral thing is to let them in. No, the law is not moral; it's the law. Even I can remember when I was, maybe 10 or 11 years old, when we had this illegal. Bernie Snelling hired this guy that was what Mother called a wetback.
Okay, well, I've heard that term.
Yeah, they didn't like him back then either. And that was, 70 years ago.
Oh, so okay, so I'm nearly 59 years old. Where did the wetback term come from?
Well, you cross the river.
Okay, that's what that seems simple, but you know me.
And even as an adult, I've had some of my friends say, man, you seem like you might have a little, your shirt might be a little wet. Because like I said, it's all in fun, but you couldn't do that.
So why did Grandma not like the wetbacks?
Because they did it the right way, and they were here illegally. Because again, even as illiterate as they were, they still knew you had to obey the law.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm a conservative, and I completely I believe that exactly like you've said. It's been tough listening to all the publicity and how difficult it is with them people, against ICE, and they had a little. I didn't tell you about this, but did I tell you about passing the ICE people? The people, anti-ICE people. No. Well, it's my first political statement. Okay, I was driving out from getting your peanut butter cookies.
Yeah.
And I went up by the Veterans Bridge, and I saw a lot of cars and and it looked like how we are. We call it like we see it. A bunch of looked like upper class white people, and they were up there and I didn't know what it was. And I got up there close and saw it was anti-ICE, and they all were in there waving at me, and everything, and yelling. And I I pointed and they all yelled back, and I give them the big thumbs down, and they started cursing me. I figure, I'm half wetback, so, I could go either way. But anyway, what do you think about the anti-ice? I mean, what is?
I don't know if it's. I think a lot of them and other up north or whatever, they're paid, and to ask people, but I don't know if it's mostly white guilt or just I don't know what it is. They don't know the law. They don't want to obey the law. What's wrong with obeying the law? And like they said, especially these Democrat Congress people that think it's wrong will change the law. That's your job.
Sounds
ICE
good to
is
me.
just
Yeah.
doing their job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they say, well, they're rounding up everybody. Well, if they would work, if the locals would work with ICE, they could say, hey, we've got these legal, come and get them and get out of here. That's all it takes. Then they wouldn't be around.
Does the council here, I mean, I don't know if you keep up with it as much as you used to, but the council here, you were obviously a Chattanooga City councilman. If you're a councilman now, or do you think they have any, is that on the table at all for them that they're having to deal with?
No, I don't think so. But, basically, you have to think we're a sanctuary city because,
Really?
of course, I fill in as a court officer for Judge Patey, and they come in there and they're illegal. They don't have driver's license. They don't have insurance. They can't speak English, and all you do is fine them $50 in court costs.
Yeah.
Most of the time you would think it's hey, you're illegal. We're going to deport you, but they just let them go.
Do you? I know you got that really hot salsa the other. You go in the Mexican store, right? Do you go in a lot of those stores?
No.
The Mexican store, I do actually, and they treat me like a white person in there.
Well, it's embarrassing to me because I can't speak the language.
Yeah.
And I can't understand them, and I can't. And two, when they first, now when I first moved here, there's only one Mexican restaurant, and that was El Phoenix over there by Hamilton Place, and it didn't last long. It went away. And then for years, there wasn't a Mexican restaurant that I can remember until that, what was that on Broad Street?
Yeah, the one we used to go to all the time. Cancun. Yeah.
Jorge,
he was there. Yes, I remember.
And I go in there, and then regularly come in there, they start speaking Spanish to you, and then they can't understand English, so it's kind of hard to order or get their order right. So, I kind of stay away from those places where we don't understand each other. And it's embarrassing because I wished I knew how to speak Spanish, especially when I was a council clerk. I could help some. But like I said, they don't accept me because for some reason I believe they could see something different about me. Of course, that again comes in, when it was 7, 8 years ago when I found my DNA.
Yeah.
Test,
Yes.
They said I was 7% Native American.
Yeah.
So
if that's correct, do you think that's correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've through the years I've known a lot of real Native Americans and said, "You're Native American."
Oh, really?
You can tell. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
And I know one guy that I've been mistaken for, and said he used to be a umpire.
Yeah.
And I've had people, go around and say, "Hey, you still umpiring?" I said, "Yeah," and just keep moving. I didn't want to get into it. I knew who they was talking about, and he's 100% Native American.